Hello, and welcome to QC Flutter's monthly meetup. Today, we are going to be hearing from Thomas Burkhart, who's going to be speaking on his sort of framework or architecture, RVMS, a practical reactive architecture for Flutter applications. Thomas Burkhart was born in 1971, and he, refers to himself as a legacy system. He's got over almost 30 years in the industry with technologies ranging from C++ to C Sharp. He's worked on microcontrollers in C, and he's currently a freelance mobile app developer who uses Flutter and Dart. What only a few people know is that he was also a professional magician and bakes his own bread. So who knows? Maybe we'll get a little bread and a little magic at the end of this. All right, Thomas, you want to go ahead and take it away?
Okay. Yeah, then I start sharing my screen, I would say, and I go from there. So it should be this one. Now you should see my screen. Okay, seems to work. I don't see what's there, but I just trust that it will be seen. Ryan, everything good?
Yep, we see it. It's good.
Okay, no, because I have no view what it looks like. That's
Yeah, we see your slides presentation.
okay. Choose the application or thing slide. Okay, good. I have no idea how this thing works here, but I will just go ahead. Okay, yeah, welcome. I'm very happy to join you today, and also for on a time that is for all of us still good to achieve. So I'm at the end of my day, and you have a nice lunch break, as I understand it. Yeah, RVMS. What does it mean? Oh, too many screens. Okay, why another architecture? Or maybe we should ask about why, what architecture do we have at all? Because we don't have real guidance on how a Flutter app should be architectured currently from Google or from anybody. And existing architectures like Model View Presenter or Model View Model, they don't really match the reactive nature of Flutter. So and current state management systems are only a tiny part of an architecture. It does not give you really guidance how to structure your app. And the best classic pattern actually it's not so classic. It's one of the latest ones. Is MVU Model View Update describes it quite well, but it's only an abstract concept. So I thought we should have something that allows us easier to describe or easier to teach people how to structure an app. And yeah, the goals of RVMS, you see there is an X. It was called before RX VMS, and I will go on this a little bit later. This is the evolution from RX VMS. Also, it speaks easier. Now, yeah, I wanted to have something that is really easy to explore and understand. This is really an important point for me, because we read much more code than we write code. Yeah, and getting into a new code base should be easy. It should be possible to explore your code using just hitting go to definition in your IDE, and it will lead you where everything is happening. This is, for example, one of the things that I really disliked with Redux, for example, where I was not able to explore really what's going on when I started from the UI code of a new project. So easy to explore. Then important, no configuration by convention and no black magic behind the framework. Okay, we have now a little bit black magic with the GetIt mixin, which we will see later. But really, most things should be easy to understand without first having to read a huge documentation about how the framework works. So then I want to encourage ownership of code. Okay, the rest is more or less always the same. Minimal boring boilerplate code, also important because it's hard to maintain, and also it doesn't help the readability of your code. And it should be nice to work with, and it should be highly reactive. So what do I mean with highly reactive? By this I mean that we don't wait in this in this pattern for anything, but we install handlers that will react on events, and this keeps us very flexible, very dynamic. As a little example that how we structure such an app, let's imagine we have any business app that has users and that has invoices. So we have 3 layers, more or less. So that's the most parts. We have views. Oh, I should turn on the laser pointer that you can see what. Yeah. So we have views, we have managers, and we have services. And now we have the RVMS, and DR is for reactive. So that's behind the secret behind the abbreviation. And what a view is pretty clear. It's most of the times it will be a whole page or a complex widget. Database services are also easy to explain. Databases, services. Services mark the outer boundary of our app. So they are the interface that allows us to interact with systems outside of our app. This could be a database, it could be a hardware sensor, it could be some REST service on a remote system. And the important thing is a service does not do any changes of data. It does not modify data itself, but it allows us to access outside systems in comfortable manner, meaning it already does all the data conversions that is needed. For example, if I get from the REST API a JSON document, it will on the fly convert it into a real object before somebody else is using it, and the other way around. So now the most interesting part is in the middle. It's the manager level, and managers are what I call it's the some people might call it business logic. Yeah, or more or less, it is where the business logic of our app, or the actual logic of our app is housed. And managers are the ones that really can modify data on the for example, either in state that they cache themselves, or most of the times inside a database or on a remote system. So this is controlled by managers. And a manager is, I often get a question, is this a view model? No, not really, because a manager is groups business logic by its semantic. So for example, everything that has to do with invoices will be here. Everything that has to do with users will be inside here. So several views will might access the same manager, or maybe only one manager. Yeah. If I have a view that that only needs data from an external system, it can do a read access to a service directly, but it should never directly access a service to change data. And also, it's quite common that managers interact with each other. So now, how do we communicate with each other? Between the managers and the services, typically there will be an async function call or a stream, because this is what the most external systems offer us, or that we have to deal with, especially with asynchronicity. And between the managers and the views, we use value listenables. In the past, when there was an X here, it was I used streams, and I decided now to switch to value listenables because they are in many ways much easier to handle in the UI, and you don't have to care about some tricky stuff that you could run into with streams. Now, and how do we do it in the other direction? In the other direction, we use commands or method calls. So, and also between managers, we will use value listables or commands to communicate. As you see here, you know, I'm a little bit old-fashioned, which means that I started or I learned programming when the concept to make everything everything immutable was not really feasible because of performance reasons. Now, and still today, in my opinion, it's not necessary to make everything immutable. So I don't copy everything everywhere new instances of lists around. I'm a little bit more pragmatic in this. So I know there are people that really don't like it, and you can use immutable data structures with RVMS, but don't be surprised when we look at code a little bit later that I don't do it everywhere. I use final members where it's possible or where it makes sense, but that's all at the moment, but which I personally think is necessary in most cases. Okay, building blocks. Yeah, important thing, we have now here several objects or a lot of objects around that offer services, that do things. Then how do we access them from each other? And for this, here one of the building blocks I recommend using the service locator GetIt, which is actually which was the first package that I personally wrote. And it allows us to access objects that are once registered from anywhere of the app without the need of a build context, which is quite handy if I want to access a service from a manager or another manager from a manager, and I don't have any build context around because we are outside a widget tree. So, and this is how it worked before when we used a context and either an inherited widget or some other locator based on inherited widget. With GetIt, we just we register a singleton in this case, and I register it with a type and with a concrete implementation. This allows us that we can dynamically switch out implementations if we need to. But I won't get deep into GetIt. That would be another talk. And after I have registered it, I can now everywhere in my app access the object either by calling the get method, or as GetIt itself is a callable class, I can directly use it SL. Okay, I really have to delete this dot here. This is wrong. Forget this dot. It's just SL type, and I get my object. Recently, GetIt was got another sister sister package. As you might guess or already see, I'm a fan of I call it the Lego approach. So a lot of small pieces that you can plug together as you want, but you don't have to. In contrast to one big package that has everything in it. So, okay, we have GetIt. Now we have the GetIt mixin. And the GetIt mixin is a mixin that you can use on widgets, on stateless widgets, or on stateful widgets. And it gives you methods that allow you to observe objects inside GetIt that are registered inside GetIt. And they will trigger a rebuild of the widget as soon as, for example, here we have an object model somewhere inside GetIt registered. And if the name property, which is a value notifier, changes, this will trigger a rebuild of this widget. Name will receive the latest value, and then you can use it down here in your widget tree, which frees you from using any nested any builders, or in some case nested builders. Yeah, so your UI tree stays much cleaner. You can much easier, or way easier, see what's going on there. The same thing is that in contrary, if you use some other locators like provider that where you add some meta widgets to access your objects, we don't have this here. So the UI tree stays completely clean. And the black magic behind here is the same that is used by Flutter hooks. I took a lot of inspiration from there. I'm completely honest to admit this. And one of the things is, if you are already a fan of hooks, you can't use the GetIt mixin because they would try to hook in at the same place. But there is also a GetIt hooks package, which offers all the functions of the mixin in form of hooks. So you are good to go with this. Okay, where are we? So we have with the mixin and GetIt, we have a very easy way how we can observe objects that are value listenables and inside GetIt. And we will use this in the next step, where we see where does it fit in. The next major building block are commands. Flutter commands is the evolution from RX commands, and it's based on value listenables, and it wraps itself a function, async or not, and you can call this wrap function by calling the execute method of the command, or it's also a callable class, so you can directly call the object. And a command itself implements value notifier from tResult, which means that when you execute the command, the result of the function that you are wrapped will get published on the value property of the value listenable interface of the command. So a command has a value property where you will find every time you execute a command, you'll find your results. And the nice thing is, because it's a callable class, you can directly assign a command to an event handler in your widgets without having to call it as a function. Now, this wouldn't be so interesting. It gets more interesting now that we have some additional properties which are also value notifiers. One of them is executing, which will which will change its value to true or false. The moment you start executing the command, it will switch to true, and at the end it will switch back to false. And as it's a value notifier, we can observe this easily from our UI over the GetIt mixin. The other thing is if the wrapped function that we have throws an exception, this exception will get caught, unless you really don't want to get caught, but the default is it will get caught, and it will get published on the thrown exception value notifier of the command, which also can be easily observed and handled either, for example, if you want to display some dialogue or write something to a log. By the way, logs, their commands have a central global logging and error handler that you can set, which will log everything, every call to every command in your system. And you can also assign names to your commands, so you can get a very detailed log what is going on in your system if you need to. In some cases, we don't. It's nice if we have all this state information, meaning the value, the execution state, and the error state at one place. And for this, commands have an additional property results, which publishes on every state change. It publishes a command result object with all this information on it. And this is handy if I, for example, if I have a list view and I want to display in the same area the data, possible error messages, and error and progress indicator, for example. So for this, for example, I can observe the results property, and then use the cumulated data to display my data in my widget. Now we also have can execute, another property here, can execute property, and the can execute property will switch to false whenever is executing switches to true. So when the command is running, this gets to false. Now you might wonder, okay, what's the sense in this? The reason why we have this separately, for example, we can use it to enable, disable buttons on our UI. The reason for this is that you can pass, when you create in the command, you can pass in a value listenable and restriction value listenable. And so you can, from the outside, by changing the value of this value listenable that you pass in, you can switch on you can switch on or off a command completely from the outside, and this this state change will be reflected on the can execute. So can execute is actually an AND combination of the SX executing and of the current value of restriction. And we will see how we, in the code example, how we can use this nicely to define logic in a declarative way. Yeah, now just to get you an impression how this the whole thing looks like in dynamic. Whoops. Oh. I have to. Oops. Why doesn't it? Now. So the button gets pressed, which triggers the command, and we see the states that the is executing and the can execute changed our UI. Our command returns and we see the result that the data is displayed, the buttons gets enabled again. So this to give you an impression of what is going on when a command is really working. Okay, let's see some code. Okay, and
Thomas, can you make the screen just a little bit larger?
I will in a moment. I
Thank
just
you.
have to see that I'm really in the right. Yeah, I'm in the right project. Oops. Is this okay, or is this still too small?
I think it should be okay.
Okay, because otherwise we don't see much on the screen.
Yeah, where you are, I think is good. Thank you.
No problem. Oh, I clean this here. Okay. Before we go into the code, let's have a look at the app that is that is implemented here. It's a very simple app, but it shows you every aspects what we have been talking about. So I have here an app that queries an weather API. When I okay, this is interesting. Now I did this just a moment before. Okay, wait. This is now really annoying. Why isn't it working? Internal linked hash map. Just a second. Oh, they changed the API. Okay, I will just this is really annoying. Oh God. Maybe we cut this out from the recording. No, everything's fine.
No worries. I'll shorten it on the real recording, but we'll keep it in the stream.
Yeah. Wait. It's really weird because I honestly I ran it just before we came here. Okay, so we see here I can press the update button and we see the button gets disabled. I have up here a search where I can start typing, and you see it waits a little bit so that we don't until I stop typing, so that we don't hit the rest endpoint with every keystroke. So if I it searches for me, and this is the last thing. Actually, this is not really an this is just to show it. If I click switch this switch here, it will disable the command, and also if I enter something here, no update happens anymore. Therefore, if I switch to airplane mode on, for example, and we enable again here, and I do an update, that's completely fine. Was expected. Yeah. Yep. So, okay, and we get a dialog that shows us that there was a problem. So, how is all this done? And let's start with main. Okay, main is pretty boring. The only thing that we see here is that we register our singleton, the weather manager object, and we do this before we call run app. And now let's go to the manager, because this is the interesting part. The boring part is the update method, because this is just standard async call to an HTTP GET. So we won't get further into this. The only thing is it will return a future list weather entry, and weather entry has all the data that we want to display. So the interesting part comes up here. We have the and this is actually really nice that we now have with the null safety with the null version. We got the late keyword, so we can actually do a late final here. I haven't changed this yet. We can do a late final here, although we initialize all the commands inside our constructor. So a command is defined by two types. The input type that you can, that's the parameter that you can pass to a command. You don't have to, but you can. And a result value that you get back from the command when the command has finished its wrapped method. So we have an update weather command, set execution state command, which will be connected to the switch. And we have a text change command, which will later connect up to the to our search text field. And the nice thing about it is all of them are change notifiers, so they have a value property which stores actually the last value that we have. Which also means when we create a command, we have to pass in an initial value for this value. So commands are typically created inside the constructor of an object, and we start with the set execution command. Command has a lot of factory functions to facilitate the different sorts of commands that you could have, and in this case, we create a synchronous command, and it has a bool input, bool output, and all it does actually is it passes it passes the value that it gets from the switch through to the value property of the command. Then we have the update weather command, which is an asynchronous command which accepts a search string or null and will return a list. And we pass them the update function that we have briefly seen below here. And it gets an initial value, an empty collection. And now we see here as restriction, we can directly pass in the set execution state command that is connected to the switch. And this is actually all we have. At the moment we have connected it to the switch, this is all we have to do, that the update is enabled or disabled automatically by passing in the other command. Now the text change command we will also just use to access the value and store it in the value property of the command. But then we use the and this might look familiar to a lot of people. I have another package. It's called functional listeners, which offers Rx-like extension methods for value listenables. And so in this case, we have Debounce that enables us to realize this functionality that we have to it waits a moment after the input before it calls it, so that we don't hit on every change of the text field with 500 milliseconds. And it also offers a nice listen function, which finally allows us to use value listenables or change notifiers in a way that is as it should be. That it gets registers automatically a value notification handler, and the function that you pass in here gets automatically the latest value of the value listenable, and also it gets the unlistenable subscription passed in, so that it can cancel itself if you don't want to react any longer on your command. Okay, so the text change command listens to changes and then calls the update better command to update the data again. I tend to use the execute function when I use commands in not in the UI layer. I feel it's a little bit more expressive what's going on, but you wouldn't need to, because it's a callable class. So we listen to the thrown exceptions and print this out to the standard log when an exception happens. And at a startup, we call execute once that we already have data. So by this little piece of code, I have very declarative defined the behavior of this UI. I have the I have the locking mechanism. I have the debouncing, and everything else now is that we have to observe this commands from the UI to get the whole thing working. So the homepage looks uses an the GetIt. In this case, it is an. Actually, I should change this. It's no longer necessary that it's a stateful widget, but in this case, it's a stateful widget. So we use the GetIt state mixin and the GetIt stateful widget mixin. And in the did change dependency, we subscribe to the update weather command, thrown exceptions, listen and listen there, and by this we show the alert dialog in this case. This is actually even easier to do with the mixin, but leave it by at the moment. So this is all we have to do, that we have the possibility for the dialog. And in our build method, we get with watch X, we watch the is executing property. We watch the can execute, and also the set executions, the value of the set execution state command, if we are enabled or disabled, and they are all assigned to local variables at the beginning of the build function, and then we can use them inside our build function. Here, the onChanged in the text box gets the text change command directly assigned, because we have the is running. We have the is running. We can display our circular progress indicator with a simple if inside here, and we have the button, and the button has the in the on pressed, depending on the button enabled. Oh, typo. Which we get here from the can execute. Yeah, we either assign the update weather command, or null. Actually, with the switch to null safety, there is currently there's an open issue for this, that we have a problem assigning a void callback which is non-nullable or which is non-nullable to a nullable one, and this is the reason why I have to use if it's a callable class. So I have to use the call method in this place to get it working. But I hope this will be resolved soon. Yeah, and in the switch, I just access the switch value, and then on change, I pass in this set execution state command, which will get changed. And yeah, that's it more or less. On the list view, I have just a single watch X, which watches the update weather command and gets the data. Everything else from there is extremely straightforward. Yeah. Project structure of an RVMS app, in my opinion, should be organized feature-wise. So not that we pack all managers in one folder and all your widgets in one folder. No, this is an example of my current my current project that I'm working on, and we see here we organize it by features or by more complex blocks, and the idea behind this that it will enable us much easier to navigate through code, because I don't have to search in a folder with 10 or 15 managers. Where is the right one when I want to use when I am interested in the one that is responsible for things concerning the main page, for example, yeah. Or I have in this app has an there is a map is a huge part. So I made the map a top level folder, and it has its managers under it. We have the app config as one top model. It has services and the model. It has in this in this case it has no manager, because it has also it doesn't need it in this case. Yeah, so it's an I'm not dogmatic in this here. Do it in a way that allows you to to access most easily your source code in the way you're thinking of features. In generally, I believe that the idea of, I call it a self-responsible widget, meaning that every widget that's a little bit more complex. Yeah, okay, let me step one step back. In the past, the idea, especially for example with MVVM frameworks, was that it will make it easier for us to reuse widgets in other apps. The reality is that most app-specific widgets or pages won't be reused ever. And from this, it's I get to a different point of view, that if I have a page or a more complex widget, I don't want to configure it from the outside and push everything in. No, the widget itself knows where it gets its data, and this makes it very easy to test such a widget, because it does everything itself. I don't have to set it up in any way. I only have to make sure that the managers and services are registered inside GetIt, and I can use it. And yeah, and one rule: they don't implement any business logic beyond their own semantic context. So they should not do anything any side effects that have nothing to do with themselves. Yeah, this has to be done then inside the manager, but not will not be triggered from the widget. And one side effect for this is, yeah, that as such a widget always is written in a connection with its managers, with its services underneath. It definitely encourages the feel of code ownership. Yeah, you are not just coding some visualization. No, you should always have a vertical slice of the app that you are responsible for. Yeah, some resources from me. I have a blog. Unfortunately, not really. I should update a lot of the RX VMX post to this. So currently not much written about RVMS or over Flutter command, but now we have this talk, and there are some other talks about it. And I have the most important packages. GetIt Mixin, Flutter command, functional listener. I forgot to put it here. And the presentation example projects are on GitHub. I made some slight changes today. I will update this on GitHub in a moment, and also post a link to the where I share the pure presentation over my OneDrive. Yeah, so that's it for today.
All right, awesome. I guess we can jump right into Q&A.
Yeah, sure. I leave my I switch over here in case that in the Q&A. Yeah. So I keep sharing the screen. It might be easier to answer some questions. Sure.
All right, so if anybody has any questions, you can ask them in the chat, or you can also ask them in the questions tab as well, and we'll ask them so that everybody can hear them.
Thomas, while we're waiting on this, this was excellent. And I guess as a quick disclaimer, as I was first learning state management within Flutter, I watched, this was in early 2019, I watched one of your late 2018 London meetups. 1 hour of you talking about RxVMS over and over and over and over again until I finally figured out what the hell you were talking about. So thank you.
I remember.
Thank you for doing that. Oh, go ahead.
I guess I made some progress in the meantime in explaining it.
It is intimately familiar, and also it's interesting to see how this has changed over the last 2 years. I think that's great. I'm curious if you would be interested, because we last month we had Romain Rassel from France do a Dash Punk app, which is now on GitHub and has 4 different variations of state within its pull request architecture. It has binder, it's got MobX, Riverpod, and GetX. Do you think there would be any interest in adding to that so that we can see the same?
I actually have already forked this project. But I have to say, the project is not really ideal to show what's going on, because I have looked at the way the original one with binder is going on, and it's way too complex for the thing that it's doing. So I'm not really sure how I will. What's the best way how to fit it in with Flutter command? Because definitely there are cases where it doesn't make sense to use a command. Yeah, so I have some situations where I just call a method in my manager, and this method does some things, and the result is published on an independent value listenable in the manager. Yeah, it really depends. Yeah, so I know that this might make it more difficult for beginners, but I'm not very dogmatic. I say okay, you have different possibilities to do it. I give it guidance, but it's not that you have strictly to follow in the way always make a command for everything and do it like this and this. No, there is always guidance, and if you have a reason to do it differently, just do it. Yeah, just
That's fair. And I think really the benefits of managing quickly how your variable or the aspect that you're listening to and subscribe to is, if it's in process and then back, if it is executable and then going back, I think that really gives you value, as well as that aspect of debouncing, which really
also a functional listener it offers we have a merge, or we have a combined latest, so you can really even express more complex relationships or business rules that you have by this in a declarative way, for example. And if you want, I'm happy to come back another time and also to tell us a little bit more about what you really can do with GetIt and the mixin.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that was discussed during last weekend's Flutteristas convention, I think very well, was the concept of testing, and specifically testing streams. And you had mentioned some of the values with testing within your architecture, within RVMS and the command. Can you touch on that just a little bit more?
Oh yeah. If you actually there are two ways you can test in this architecture. One of the way is that you can just switch out because GetIt registers with the type with the interface type, I would say, and the real implementation. You can easily switch out the real implementation for some mock object, for example. Yeah. And there is actually there's actually there is a mock command class that you can use instead of real commands, and mock commands allow you to completely control what the command is doing, that you then can test your UI with it. So you can start an action with a value. You can say what result will come on, or you can give it a whole list of the next results that will that it will emit. So this has a lot of power if you want to go this way. Or you use the normal commands, but implement a whole mock manager, for example, yeah, which might make sense if your backend is not ready yet.
One question that I had, is there a scenario where RVMS might not be a good fit for your application?
It's a good question. I think it's because of the yeah. Let's put it the other way. I had recently a discussion with a developer from a burden company that decided to go for Redux for their project, and I asked him why did they choose this, and he said, "Yeah, we have a lot of not so experienced Flutter developers, and Redux just gives us clear guidance that we have to do it every time exactly this way." It's a totally valid argument to go this way. Yeah, I personally I feel very much restricted in my creativity when I'm designing an OO system. I grew up with object-oriented design, yeah, with Creative Boots talks when I got into programming basically. So I think in objects, and for this is also why I have a little bit of problem with the current immutability dogma, because in classical object-oriented systems, I break down the whole functionality into smaller pieces that can be easily overseen, and that modify their own data inside encapsulated objects. Yeah. So this is my school of thinking, where I'm coming from, and I know and I know that today there is a whole school of thinking that goes away from this, and and for this maybe RVMS might not be the most ideal way to do it, but in general, actually, and also you are not limited to the components that I shown in this case. For example, there's no reason why you shouldn't build an RVMS app and use provider or Riverport instead of GetIt, for example, yeah, and just use the Flutter command as a command. I think, or if you really are into RX, yeah, use the RX command version of the Flutter command, and with the null safety version that I just pushed beta this afternoon, I harmonized now or I ported back the RP improvements from Flutter command back to RX command, yeah, so that they are on the same base, yeah. So, but in general, I haven't seen yet any problem. But to be fair, I never have worked with a team with with more than three developers on an app. So if I have a project like the Facebook Messenger with 1,000 developers, or with Facebook app with 1,000 developers, although I have no idea how 1,000 developers are working on one mobile app, this is this is something that completely goes beyond my my imagination. Or I also haven't done yet an app with 100 pages, different pages. Luckily, I'm doing a little bit more funny stuff with visualization of drones, which has not so many views, but a lot of custom painters. Yeah. Actually, I'm waiting for feedback from people. I have interestingly, yeah, there are. I get regularly, or in the last time, I get more and more questions over personal messages on Twitter, on RVMS, and on Flutter command, on GetIt. So we'll see what the future brings. No questions. Either I just was pushing too much information in a short time, or I was too good and there are no questions left. I have no idea what's the explanation.
Yeah, I took the latter, that you were just too perfect.
Yeah, it's too perfect. It was too perfect.
Or we have no viewers. This would be the worst situation.
That's fine. It is what it is. Yeah. Just out of curiosity, can you speak to some of the other ways that GetIt has been used to date since you first developed it a couple of years ago?
How do you mean?
Well, so in many ways, I've looked through and seen a lot of people use GetIt as a service locator that is you've kind of touched on the modularity of the packages that you use, that people can use your RVMS model or RX command if they're interested in things along those lines with the work that you've done. But then on the other side, they can use your service locator, even if they're using a different a different.
Oh yeah, definitely. Actually, there are several people that use the combination of GetIt and provider, which I find a little bit of funny, but and not necessary, because if you have GetIt, you don't need another service locator for the UI. But some people just started with provider and then figured out, oh, maybe it would be nice to have something easy to access my business objects where I know build context is around. Yeah. But to be fair, there is also another package in combination. It's related with the state notifier package from REMI, which now offers an locator interface to a provider that does not rely on the build context. Yeah. So, but GetIt has some very unique features that makes it worthwhile to think about it, not just for the service location. First of all, it has a very, very comfortable synchronization of startup synchronization of asynchronous objects that you have when you that you don't want to do manually normally, or if you do it manually, your startup code gets really ugly. Yeah. This is very nicely solved by it. Recently, I added a scoping mechanism, which is not bound to the UI tree, which is, in my opinion, in 99% of the times, it's an advantage, because it scopes, in my opinion, make a much more sense from a business logic view. For example, I have an app with where no user is logged in, and now a user gets logged in, and I push a new scope, and I can be sure when I pop this scope again, there's no longer any object around that allows somebody to access my data, for example. Yeah. Or I create a new shopping cart. I push a new scope for the shopping cart, register there my new objects that have to do with the shopping cart. And if I log out, or if I decide to cancel my shopping, I just have to pop the scope and I'm done. Yeah. So I think I think the way how I develop packages, it's a very pragmatic one. I build normally packages that I need myself, and I know that there are people out there that are way smarter, yeah, than I am, and they probably do some very sophisticated approaches that are theoretically very, very sound. But honestly, I went quite well the way I did it so far, and I think I will continue this way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thing that you want to ask me? You can ask me anything.
Well, I just
why the unicorn? Actually, I do want to know why the unicorn on your Twitter handle.
Oh, this is from last year. No, this is from this was December 2020. When we were invited to the to Flutter Interactive in New York, and Very Good Ventures, they made a party the day before the official event, and we were all invited. And all of us who were going to go there added the unicorn to the Twitter handle. And honestly, unicorn rules, yeah. So
oh yeah,
it's
well, I mean, Philip had talked about the designer developer as the unicorn, and I had always wondered if that was it. But yeah, no, this is awesome.
but honestly, I really love the thing that Very Good Ventures choose a unicorn for their more or less unofficial logo, yeah, because it's it's so nice, self-ironic. It's all VCs are looking for the unicorn, yeah, and so they have the unicorn. That's something that I really love. Yeah,
it's a good idea.
Okay, yeah. So I have to leave you because there's some raised hand. Who is raising a hand here?
Hey, look at that.
What does the raising hand mean?
Oh, yeah. So we can add you and put you on the stage is what that means. And so you should be able to come up.
Hello.
Hi, Lucy.
Can you hear me well?
Yep, we hear you.
Perfectly.
Okay, great. So I'm going to be completely honest. Most of it went over my head because I actually just started developing, and I am using Flutter, and it's a very long story, but I'm previously banker / lawyer that decided to develop an app and hired a couple of developers. They started with Flutter, never really got to the point where, or their work wasn't at the quality that I was hoping for. So little by little, I started learning what Flutter was about, the widgets, this and that. So now I'm actually recoding the app. You mentioned Getter and you mentioned Provider. And initially, when the app was developed, it was developed with a lot of, set state management. And now I've been told, no, don't do that. It's very restrictive. Go down the path of Provider and using models, which when I write the code, basically I'm telling it, hey, go to this provider and then get this from the model. So you mentioned something that grabbed my attention because I'm thinking, can I do this even in an easier, seamless way? And you mentioned that, people are using both Provider and Getter. And maybe right now we don't have the time for you to give me a long answer. Point me to resources where I can, understand the difference better.
Definitely. I think, by the way, first thing, set state isn't anything bad. Yeah, this is one of the important things that is often misunderstood. Because if you look into the source code of any builder in the Flutter framework, all they do is calling set state at one place. Yeah, so it is not nothing completely ugly and bad. It is bad if you keep all your actually business data and store them inside your states of the widgets. Yeah, this is not a good idea because it messes everything up. So you can with GetIt. GetIt is a very straightforward way to handle this, but if you want to know more about this, I really recommend. I did a talk recently on. Oh wait, let me pull it up in a second.
Okay, great.
Because I was just referring to Flutter Warsaw, but Flutter Warsaw I did the RVMS talk, so this wouldn't help you, but.
I would also, so Ryan Edge has a blog post called Flutter State 5 Ways, which shows 5 different variations that you can consider state. I have on the Made You blog post, I linked to that, and I linked to an hour-long lecture as well that kind of talks about state from Simon Lightfoot from January of this year. The benefit and the challenge is there are a number of different ways that you can approach state management today. The challenge being that there isn't a right answer, and the flexibility can also be confusing for people that are early into the development process or learning how to do Flutter development. And I have the unique challenge and the fun challenge of teaching Flutter Dev to healthcare providers frequently, who may not be fully into that space yet, but are learning and eager to learn. And with that in mind, for basic stuff, I have some videos that teach with that and with intermediate aspects as well. But really, I would probably start with, if it's already in Provider and you're using GetIt, stick with what's set up and work with what's there so that you can build from that rather than completely refactoring everything and starting from scratch, unless the state management approach makes the most sense to you. But realistically, what I would suggest is watch and watch and watch videos of people doing this at length, because I think it's extremely helpful to get that. And then once you do, pick the thing that works best for you and then build from that. And I mentioned earlier how I had watched Thomas's lecture from late 2018 over and over and over and over again, just so I could get to that single spot so that I could understand the way that he was doing RX command, so that I could then build something that followed that architecture. And I think that is, I mean, I'm kind of asking you to be OCD and just watch the same things over and over again. But I think that is helpful. And I think it really helped me because I was not at this state 2 years ago.
May I add? I just posted in YouTube link to the talk on GetIt that I gave last week for an Indian meetup, which goes deeper into GetIt and GetIt Mixin. You can also see it like this. If you want a simple state management solution, which is very comfortable, you combine GetIt with GetIt Mixin, and you are done. It's perfectly valid. But if you want to have more control and more flexibility, then you can throw in Flutter commands in between. But it's completely fine to go with the GetIt and GetIt Mixin.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that the nice thing about GetIt and GetIt Mixin is they're kind of like building blocks, so you can continue to add. You can scale up your complexity. From there, you start with that as your baseline, and then you can scale up your complexity, like Thomas said, by adding something like RVMS.
Yes, and that's the feel that I have. Again, I'm new to this, but you're right, John. The more videos I see, something like in the brain eventually clicks. Yes. And you go, oh, now this makes sense. So yeah, but it's been I started with Udemy, 40-hour course by Maximilian. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. And again, 20 hours into the course, nothing was sticking, and then suddenly I started coding. So
yeah, I started with Udemy as well. So this is the way to start. I had to YouTube, and honestly, this is why I became. Started making YouTube videos, and the stream will be posted up on YouTube as well. It was purely to help others as I was going through the same path myself as someone who didn't take the standard developer path into becoming a Flutter developer. So really, I do think there's value in what is free and open as educational materials for others.
Agree. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to get also the link to a repository from here, but
it looks like we did have a couple questions from Himanshu. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name correct.
Okay, I have here. This here is the my fork of the Flutter architecture samples repo. And it has an RVMS branch in it, where you can see how this app is built with RVMS, for example. And it makes sense not just watching videos, but for example, clone the RVMS branch. I'll get it the right one, and just explore it, the code with your IDE. Starting from the UI, from the widget tree, and then with F12, if you use VS Code, go to definition, explore down into the logic below, for example. Yeah, this is something that's very helpful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I wrote it up. Thanks.
We've got one more question, and then I do have a hard stop in about 5 minutes. So Himanshu, if you want, we can invite you up to the stage if you raise your hand, or I can start reading this out loud. I've been using Flutter for almost 2 years, and I'm a third-year CS student currently. I want to know what the requirements are for a Flutter Dev role. I've created a list of requirements, but wanted to know your view on it. The other question being, I've read the blog of RVMS on Medium, and it's different from this session. Is that not updated yet?
I'm not sure which blog which article he means, but if it's my own, if it's from me and on Medium, then it's definitely not updated, and it's on the RxVMS
yes.
time. Yeah, it's definitely old.
RxVMS is older for sure.
But the problem is really I don't know where to take the time currently to do all this stuff. And also, I got the impression that people really prefer learning it by video. Yeah, but this. What are the requirements for Flutter Dev? It's a good question. I think if you the most important thing that you can do beside studying is create some app for your own. Choose some problem that you personally have, yeah, or a friend personally has, and write an app for it. Completely, it doesn't matter. It's completely doesn't matter if somebody else will use it at any time afterward. But having a goal for an app is the most important thing to get to have motivation, and you will learn way more. You can watch YouTube's videos of videos and videos, and you can read and read and read articles, but you only will get into a position that you can get hired, and or that you are of value for somebody who will hire you if you get an experience by just coding. This is really one of the important things. The other thing is start that you can do. For example, I know what Remy tells always the story that he learned Flutter by answering Stack Overflow questions. That he looked at Stack Overflow questions, and if he didn't know the answer, he started to dive down into the framework and find the answer. Yeah, and by this he was learning. It's a good strategy, honestly, and also joining some open source package that you want to contribute, that you like, helping people there learn from the code that they are doing. These are things, but really the best thing to do is write one app from beginning to end, and this will give you so much insight in things.
I would also add, pick something that is one step away from your comfort zone. Don't begin with something that's like 3 or 4 steps down, because then you're not going to be able to finish it. Take one step out, and then a few months later, you're going to look back and you take another step, and you take another step. And after 2 years, you're going to be really impressed as how far you've gone. But one step. Don't try and just go fully into a very complex application that would take 1,000 Facebook developers to make. Just go one step.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add a little bit more, to add my answer, I think what you look for, I don't think you can say like there's a specific thing that you look for in a dev role. I think it differs depending on where you are in your career. Like you wouldn't look for the same thing in a senior versus a junior. And likewise, like when I'm talking to a junior developer, I'm thinking more about like their potential.
Yeah.
So, what pet projects have you worked on? What kind of things have you done in your spare time? Then I am thinking about where they are currently. Whereas when, you're looking at somebody who's senior who may, say, oh, I have 5 years of experience doing Flutter development, then you might be like, okay, well, do they understand component-driven development? Do they understand why you might use, why would you use set state versus using, Thomas gave a great sort of explanation of why you might use set state versus why you might use state management framework or library. Do they understand some of those things that you would expect somebody who's built applications over time to have like gone through the problems and sort of came up with those solutions on their own? But it's really, at the end of the day, for me, it's mostly down to potential, and then like, what does the team need? Like, what are our weaknesses, and can we find somebody who sort of fills those weaknesses?
Great. Well, on that note, Thomas, thank you so much for your time today. This was excellent.
Yeah, I will now have to appease my wife because I originally promised already to have cooked. So I have to see that I hope she isn't starved in the meantime because dinner wasn't ready. But I really enjoyed it with you guys, and yeah, I'm happy to come back. I have a lot of other interesting stuff to tell about, not only GetIt.
It's fair.
Yeah, I would love to have a meeting for a meetup about GetIt. I would love to.
Oh, agreed.
Yeah, or think about my upcoming Flutter WebGL, for example. Will be nice, a nice thing.
Agreed.
But yeah, we have a lot of time coming. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
Bye bye.
Thank you, everybody, for attending.